chur. I knew the laughter was for me the second I stepped onto the gravel driveway. It came sharp, high, and pointed, chur. Like they'd been rehearsing it since dawn. My cousin Marissa elbowed her sister and whispered loud enough for half the crowd to hear well, chur. Would you look at that? Didn't know auctions letting people who live paycheck to paycheck. I felt my jaw tighten. But I didn't give them what they wanted. I just kept walking, heels steady, chin up, chur. I'd learned years ago that silence cuts deeper than snapping back. What they didn't know, what nobody here knew, chur, was that I hadn't been broke in a very, very long time. The estate in front of us stretched wider than 3 football fields, with a white facade and pillars like something out of a magazine. People were buzzing about rumors, 112 million, private gardens, chur. A pool house bigger than normal homes. This place was the crown jewel of the auction circuit. And every wealthy family in the county wanted a piece of it, including mine, and they were thrilled to see me right in the middle of the crowd, chur. Like some embarrassment they hoped would disappear if they stared hard enough. Aunt Jenna gave me a slow once over. Sweetheart, she cooed, chur, this isn't a thrift sale. You don't get discounts for being you. I smiled politely. I know exactly where I am. She smirked like she'd won something. Truth was, I had avoided gatherings with them for years. After Mom passed, things changed. My relatives had treated me like I was a burden, like every breath I took cost them something, chur. When I left home at 19 with 2 suitcases and a dream to build my own real estate research firm, chur, they predicted I'd end up begging for help or crawling back with apologies. I had done neither. Instead, I worked like I had no choice but to win, and it turned out I was very good at it. By 27 I had clients on both coasts. By 28, chur, wealthy investors trusted my market forecasts over some companies' entire analytics teams. And a year after that, chur, I made a private deal with a retiring developer that changed my financial life forever. But right now, chur, the only thing they saw was the girl they used to insult at holidays. I walked toward the registration booth. The woman behind the table looked up and smiled warmly. Name please. Alexis Reed. Her eyebrows lifted. Recognition flickered, chur. She'd clearly seen my credentials or the bank letter I submitted to qualify. Welcome, Miss Reed, she said, handing me a sleek black paddle. You're cleared for the full bidding range. Marissa, who'd followed me just close enough to eavesdrop, choked on her breath. Full. You mean, chur. The registration woman gave her a polite practice smile. Only registered bidders beyond this point, chur, ma'am. Marissa stared at my paddle like it betrayed her personally. I could practically hear her brain scrambling. Alexis registered fully. It didn't fit the story they'd created about me. Inside the courtyard, I found a quiet corner. People gathered in clusters, chur, discussing budgets and plans to flip or rent the estate. I watched the auctioneer step onto the platform, adjusting his microphone, chur. My heart thudded with adrenaline, not from nerves, but from the anticipation of what was about to unfold, chur. The estate had sentimental weight for my relatives. For 3 generations, they dreamed about owning a property like this, chur. They'd been bragging about it for months, telling everyone the Reed clan was finally rising again. As if they hadn't stepped on me every chance they got, chur. But the universe has a funny sense of humor, because the one person in the family they'd always dismissed as useless, chur. She had the highest spending power in this courtyard, and they had absolutely no idea. The auctioneer lifted his hand. Ladies and gentlemen, chur will begin in 60 seconds. Marissa's voice carried across the space. She'll faint before she bids. Watch this. I inhaled slowly, calm, steady, chur, focused. My phone vibrated with a message. Evan, my financial advisor, funds are cleared. You're good to go, chur. Alex. A small rush of warmth went through my chest. Not from the money, but from knowing I wasn't alone in my fight anymore. I had built a circle of people who respected my work, valued my ideas, and believed in me. The auctioneer slammed the gavel once. We will begin the bidding for Willow Crest Estate at $6 million. Several paddles lifted immediately. Maybe 20? 6.5, 7, 7, ape. My relatives joined too smug and confident, whispering things like, "We've got this. She'll stay quiet." They weren't wrong. For the first 20 minutes I stayed silent. 8.2839 million. People started dropping out. Aunt Jenna's voice rose. 9, 5. The crowd murmured. My cousins clapped like seals celebrating. This is it. We're getting it. I leaned against a marble pillar, checking my watch. Evan had told me exactly the point where everyone else's budgets would tap out. 10 million. 10. 2. 10. 4. Only 4 bidders remained, including my family. I slipped my paddle between my fingers. The auctioneer wiped his brow. 10,500 Dozro. Do we have 10.6? Aunt Jenna hesitated. This was their limit. I knew it. She whispered to her husband, panic tinging her voice. We can't go higher. Not without liquidating something. The auctioneer raised his chin. 10.5 going once. My cousins looked proud. They thought they were winning. Going twice. I raised my paddle gently. 11 million. Gasps rippled like wind through wheat. The auctioneer's eyes lit up. We have 11 million from bidder 69. Every head turned toward me. My relatives froze like statues. Marissa sputtered. She what? She can't. But I wasn't finished. The auctioneer looked around. Do we have 11? One silence. Not a single paddle moved. Aunt Jenna tried to save face. We don't compete with theatrics. The auctioneer lifted his gavel high. 11 million going once. My pulse thrummed. Going twice. A final gasp escaped the crowd. Sold to Miss Alexis Reed. The gavel hit the podium with a crack that echoed right through my relative's pride. I lowered my paddle, finally letting myself smile. The girl they mocked, she just bought the estate they came to claim. The courtyard felt strangely quiet after the gavel fell. People whispered, eyes darting toward me like I had broken some unwritten rule. But the only looks I cared about were the ones coming from my relatives. The shock, the confusion, the disbelief. It was almost enough to make me laugh. Aunt Jenna marched toward me first. Heels clicking like she was storming a courtroom. Alexis, she hissed, tell me you didn't actually bid. You don't have that kind of money. I met her glare calmly. Why does that bother you so much? She blinked, thrown off. It doesn't bother me. We just don't want you making a fool of yourself. I tilted my head. Funny, you didn't care about that when you all laughed at me walking in. Her face reddened instantly. Before she could respond, my cousin Trevor joined in, puffing his chest. Look, if you wanted attention, you didn't need to bid on an estate. Just say something next time. I let out a soft breath. I didn't do it for attention. They stared at me, waiting for an explanation. I didn't owe them. Their expectations of me were still trapped in the past. Back when I worked late nights at diners to afford community college textbooks. They didn't know how much I'd grown. How many people now depended on me professionally. How much I had changed since leaving their negativity behind. Marissa crossed her arms. Well, are you going to explain how you magically afford a 12 million estate, or is this another one of your fantasies? I stepped closer, lowering my voice. I don't owe you a breakdown of my finances. But I will say this, while you all spent the last few years gossiping about me, so I spent mine building something real. They exchanged uneasy glances. It wasn't magic, I continued. It was work. Something you never saw because you were too busy assuming I'd fail. Their expressions sank one by one. Before they could recover, the auction staff approached me with a tablet. Miss Reed, congratulations. We'll finalize paperwork in the main office. Thank you, I said. Following him past my frozen relatives, their silence felt like closure. Inside the office, everything moved quickly. Signatures, confirmation emails, proof of funds. The estate manager, a polite man named Daniel, looked genuinely impressed. You've secured a beautiful property, he said. Any plans yet? Yes, I replied. This will be the headquarters for my new development firm. I want it to be a place where women in real estate can actually grow instead of getting pushed aside. His eyes widened. That's incredible. We don't hear that often. Someone's got to change the narrative, I said. He laughed softly. Well, you certainly made an entrance today. When I exited the office, my relatives were still standing in the courtyard. They looked smaller now, like their confidence had drained out of them. For a second, I felt a pang of something, maybe old hurt, maybe old memories, but it passed. Aunt Jenna approached again, but slower this time. Sure, Alexis, you really bought it? She asked, voice thin. Yes, I said simply. She swallowed hard. We didn't know you were doing so well. That was kind of the point, I said. You never asked. Marissa fidgeted, her earlier smugness gone. So, what happens now? I adjusted my bag, giving them a faint smile, calm, controlled, genuine. What happens now? I go home, I keep working, I keep growing. And maybe one day you'll realize success doesn't look the way you expected. Their faces dropped again, but this time they didn't argue. I turned toward the exit, warm sunlight stretching across the driveway. For the first time in years, I felt completely free. 2 weeks after the auction, Willow Crest didn't feel like a stranger's estate anymore. The gates opened automatically when my car approached, the long driveway glowing under the evening lights I just had installed. It felt surreal, peaceful, earned mine. I walked across the marble foyer, listening to the echo of my footsteps. The renovation team had already cleared the old furniture, and the space felt like a blank canvas ready for my next chapter, my next headquarters. My next beginning. I stood near the tall windows overlooking the gardens when my phone buzzed. A text from Evan. Media picked up your option win. Congratulations again, Lex. I smiled. I didn't care about press coverage, but it was satisfying to know the story was out there. Not for revenge, not for attention, but because it showed how far I'd come since everyone counted me out. I turned when I heard footsteps. The estate manager, Daniel, walked in with a stack of plans. Ready to go over the layout. Absolutely, I said. We spent the next hour reviewing every detail. Workspace designs, conference rooms, the mentorship wing for young women entering real estate. I felt something I hadn't felt in years, a genuine sense of purpose. Not proving anyone wrong, but building something right. When we wrapped up, Daniel gathered his papers. Your team's going to love this place. And I have to say, what you did at that auction, that took courage. It took history. I corrected softly, years of it. He nodded with understanding. Well, you changed yours today. After he left, I stepped outside onto the balcony as a warm wind brushed against my shoulders. The sunset washed the entire estate in gold, and for a moment, I just stood there breathing it all in. Then I heard tires crunching on the gravel below. I looked down. My relatives, Aunt Jenna, Marissa, Trevor, they were all standing outside their car, shifting awkwardly, unsure whether they should walk closer or leave. I sighed, grounding myself. This wasn't something I feared anymore. I made my way downstairs and opened the front door. You guys need something? Aunt Jenna clasped her hands. We, wanted to apologize. Trevor nodded quickly. Yeah, we didn't realize you were doing so well. Marissa swallowed hard. We shouldn't have mocked you. It wasn't right. Their voices were quiet, almost embarrassed. It was the first time in my life any of them had apologized for anything. I leaned against the doorway, not angry, just tired of the old story. It wasn't about money. It was about respect and how you treated me. Aunt Jenna looked down. We know, and we're sorry. I exhaled slowly. Thank you. I appreciate it. Their heads lifted slightly, hopeful, but I continued gently. I'm not living in the past anymore. I worked for this life. I built it without you. I'm not angry. I'm just done trying to earn approval I never needed. They looked stunned, but they nodded. And that moment, calm, clear, peaceful, felt like the real victory. Not the estate, not the money, freedom. After my relatives drove away, the estate settled back into its quiet evening rhythm. Lights shimmered along the walking paths, and the fountains in the courtyard hummed softly. For the first time, the place didn't feel intimidating. It felt like home. I wandered through the empty halls, running my hand along the newly polished banisters. This wasn't just an estate. It was proof of every sleepless night, every risk I'd taken, every moment I refused to give up when people expected me to break. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Evan. Everything okay? You sounded tense earlier. I typed back, all good. They came to apologize. I think this chapter is closed. A moment later, he replied, proud of you. You handled it with more grace than most people would. I smiled. Grace wasn't something I had growing up. It was something I had to learn in order to survive. I stepped outside onto the stone patio. The air smelled fresh and cicadas buzzed faintly in the distance. I sat at the edge of the garden, staring at the silhouette of the estate against the fading light. This place was the beginning of my new company. But it was also the beginning of something more personal. The life I'd built without needing validation or approval from people who once dismissed me. The garden gates creaked open, and I turned to see Daniel walking up with a clipboard tucked under his arm. Didn't mean to intrude, he said. Just wanted to drop off the final blueprint revisions. I waved him over. You're not intruding. I could use a distraction. He sat beside me on the stone bench. Long day. A symbolic one, I said with a small laugh. My relative showed up. Tried to apologize. He raised an eyebrow. And how'd that go? I accepted it, I replied. But I didn't let them back into a place in my life they never earned. He nodded slowly. Healthy choice. I glanced at him. Feels like this estate isn't just a business move for me. It's healing something. He smiled. Then it's already worth the investment. For a moment we sat quietly, two people on a stone bench looking out at a future rising from the ashes of old wounds. Alexis, he said gently, I've seen a lot of people buy properties. But I've never seen anyone reclaim their story quite like you did. I felt warmth rise in my chest. Thank you. That means more than you know. He stood, offering a hand to help me up. Ready to see the new office wing tomorrow? Absolutely. As we walked back toward the entrance, the estate lights flickered on one by one, glowing like a promise. I paused at the door, taking it all in. The girl who once felt small, ignored, and underestimated was gone. In her place stood a woman who had built her own path, her own company, and now her own estate. My revenge wasn't the purchase. It was the quiet confidence of a life I shaped myself. A life that finally felt like mine.